a feminist, eh? You want to smash the patriarchy right in the face and dismantle all spheres of oppression in women's everyday lives? You think you got what it takes? You think you can work on undoing years of sexist, racist, and classist socialization that upholds the dominant cultural hegemony? You think you can challenge your own transphobic, ableist, and homophobic assumptions? You think you have what it takes to be a feminist?
Sir! No, sir! There's no fighting the pink unicorn, sir! Yeah, I wanted to make a smart remark on this, but this is the best thing I could come up with. Seriously, 90% of the things you mention are perceived. And there is no way to fight a perceived threat if it's not based in reality.
Okay, then let's do it. In mainstream discussions of feminism, a lot of the time feminism will simply be defined as a movement that aims for social equality between men and women.
Now, don't get me wrong. Where I wish that was true, this is actually not the case. Most feminist discussions is not about equality for men and women to each other, but it's for equality for women. It's not for equality of men. And we can clearly see this considering the amount of laws protecting women, yet not protecting men. Very black and white spoken, men are drawing the short stick. They are less protected, they have less rights protecting them, and even when they are victim of some of the things people would normally call a crime against women, if it happens to a man, it's just forgotten or ignored. This, however, is not the case when it happens to a woman. Or when a woman cries rape, well, consider yourself condemned, mate, if she cries it to you. But when a man cries rape, be ready to be mocked.
And while feminism encompasses this at a very basic level, there are a lot of concepts and terms that are relevant to feminism that I think are really important to know. Several of these terms I've even made entire videos talking about, so I'm gonna link to these in the description and have annotations in the video if you want to check those out. There are a lot of surface level definitions of patriarchy that you can Google, but I think the simplest and the most practical way to define it is using a sociological approach. So, patriarchy, a social system in place in which masculinity is valued over femininity and men are considered dominant to women.
Okay, could there be something that could be known as a patriarchy? Well, it's going to take a little stretch of the imagination, but yeah, okay, fair enough. It could exist. In some Middle Eastern countries and some African countries, perhaps. But if you look at the white history of Europe and later the white history of America, and even after that the black history of America, the position of women was always a guarded position. I won't say protected, I'm saying guarded. Why am I saying guarded? Because if a man dies or if a man gets killed, well, yeah, that's a problem, but come on. But if this happens to a woman, it's an outrage. For this very fact, men were allowed to work in mines when women weren't. Military has usually been occupied by men, and there are very few exceptions to this rule in history. I won't say there aren't any, but they are few. In England, the whole idea of the crying out thing started because if a woman were to witness a crime, she didn't have to intervene herself, she could cry out, and everyone that would hear it would react. They were, by law, required to react. However, if a woman cried out for no reason, or a man cried out for no reason, fair is fair, then this could cause some problems for them. This being said though, coming back to the bit of the patriarchy, patriarchy is a perceived system claiming that masculinity is more valued, where history has shown us that the higher value is not on the masculinity but on the baby bearing skills. And this is something that men don't have. So, in event, all Western societies are based on protecting the women, not the men. So how is this a patriarchy?
It's important to note that people of all genders are negatively affected by the patriarchy, and it's not cool. It's not cool.
Yeah, it's also not real. Not real. Or maybe I shouldn't say that it's not real. Maybe I should say proof that it is real. Can you give any proof that the patriarchy is real? And it can't be the same proof religious people give to prove that religion is real, because, well, the same argument then can also be used to counter that it's real. So, what real proof is there that there is a patriarchy?
Intersectionality, a concept created by Black feminists and coined by Kimberly Crenshaw that describes the way our identities, as well as systems of oppression, overlap. Feminism has historically excluded marginalized women and situated the issues relevant to privileged women at the center of feminist activism. To avoid this, making our feminism intersectional is absolutely necessary. Intersectionality acknowledges the way that things like racism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, etc. can intersect with sexism and disproportionately affect women with marginalized identities.
Well, I'll not pretend that I really understand intersectionality, but this is what it boils down to me. Either there is discrimination because you're perceived as lesser, and because of that, intersectionality says, well, you should still be equal even though others don't realize this. But somehow this is also where it goes wrong, because therefore you have the right to discriminate against someone else, which basically says you're calling someone less than you. And there is no equality in either of it. So maybe I don't understand intersectionality that well, but it really seems to me like having your cake and eating it too, and that just does not exist. But if I'm wrong, feel free to clarify it for me.
Trans inclusivity. Something that definitely needs to be more present in feminism, where we actively include trans women in our discussions and safe spaces. In the past, and unfortunately still today, many feminists have excluded trans women from their spaces and dismissed their gender identities. It's super important that we create feminist spaces that are safe, inclusive, and respectful to trans women, as well as people who are non-binary and gender non-conforming.
Well, inclusivity is something that needs to happen with feminism anyway, because feminism is not, as you said, for the equality of men and women, but for the equality of women. This is why intersectionality was added to feminism, because white women and women of color. But leaving it as it is, are trans people equal to non-trans people? Well, simply put, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, will everyone enjoy their company, and will they not get harassed? I'm sorry, welcome to the world, but if you even have beautiful red hair, and trust me, a lot of men will call red hair on a woman beautiful, there will be men who will make fun of you because of it. Hell, try to have red hair as a man. So, yes, there will always be people insult you for stupid reasons. As soon as you start talking about a safe space, what you're really doing is you're talking about limitations to freedom of speech. And if you want to limit freedom of speech, basically you're showing what you really are. You're being totalitarian. Because you cannot handle anything that does not agree with what you think should happen.
Privilege. A term used to describe a set of advantages or lack of disadvantages experienced by a dominant group. One of the functions of privilege is that it often obscures the disadvantages of others, and it makes people who are a part of these dominant groups unaware of their privileges. Also, recognizing that someone holds privilege doesn't make them a bad person. It just means that they're not going to experience disadvantages based on certain aspects of their identity.
Yeah, just like the patriarchy, I'm willing to think that privilege is somewhat of a religious idea, concept. Why? Because if you're going to say that all of a certain society are privileged, and let's make it easy, let's say all white men are privileged, then you're ignoring that most white men are poor and they have simple jobs and they manage to work and survive from day to day just like most women. And only a very small amount of people, of white people, you can actually claim have privilege. Um, just like there are black people with privilege because they have fathers or family who are millionaires or even billionaires, and I'm sorry, money is privilege if you want to talk about privilege. But money doesn't care about where you're from. Because I'm really curious, who do you think is privileged, or how many white people do you think are privileged in China, or Japan, or Africa, or Saudi Arabia, just to mention a few countries. So, does privilege exist? Well, yeah, of course. Some people can be privileged. Some. Limited amounts. Is it gender based? No. Is it racial based? No. So why are we talking about this as if it were? That being said though, there are some privileges, one could call them, on average when we are talking about gender roles, because there are more laws protecting women than there are laws protecting men. So maybe that is privilege. But if that is privilege, then it's men who are on the receiving end of this, not women.
Gender roles! A set of social and behavioral norms that are considered appropriate for men and women. They almost always adhere to the gender binary when viewed in Western culture.
It's too bad that you make it sound as if gender roles are a choice when there is a very strong biological marker that sets behavior. And this is one of the reasons why the schooling system in the US, but unfortunately in Europe and in the UK as well, seems to be more in favor of girls than it is of boys, because the biology of these people is very different. So it's a lot easier for a girl to sit still and study a book than it is for a boy whose masculinity forces him to expend energy in a different way. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying men can't learn from books, nor am I saying that women can't expend energy and in that way have a better life, but on average, this is why men are biologically designed to be able to expend their energy in a different way, and they learn in a different way than women. This is not good, this is not bad, this is biology. And the whole concept of gender roles makes it sound as if this is societal preference of the situation. It's not societal preference of the situation. It's societal acceptance of the situation. Or, in case of feminism, the blindness to this situation. You're trying to deny biology, which is okay by me, I don't mind, but it is going to bite you in the ass. Now, that one person is better at A and another person is better at B might mean that person A will earn more than person B, but inherently they're not intrinsically more valuable than the other one. So this is a difference between equality and equal. We're not going to be equal, but we can have equality.
Gender binary. The classification of gender into two distinct and opposite categories of masculine and feminine. This binary excludes people who don't identify as men or women, such as non-binary, gender fluid, and gender non-conforming individuals. The existence of people who don't adhere to the gender binary shows that gender is more of a spectrum rather than a two-category system.
Okay, yeah, I hear what you say, and at the same time, you could not be more wrong. And this is not me saying this. You will hear this from a lot of people. Again, you're mistaking a social concept for biology. There is only gender binary. No matter what value you want to give it, there is only gender binary because there are only two options. You are A, a woman, or B, not a woman. And if you're not a woman, you must be man. I could turn this around. I could say you must be A, a man, and B, if you're not a man, you must be a woman. There is no other distinction. This, again, is biology. Now, you can choose, as an individual, to identify with another gender. Or, I believe at the moment we also have people who are identifying as animals, or what's it called, otherkin. That's okay. You can identify as, I don't know, Popeye for all I care. But when it comes to gender, there are two options. Male or female. Now, it is true that you can have surgery to appear to become of the other sex, which is all good and well. I'm not going to argue about that. Yet still, then there will just be two options. I mean, if you're a man and you had surgery to become a woman, then okay, most of your body will still be man, but for all intents and purposes, except for bearing children, you are now woman. And if you're a woman and you had a surgical operation to become a man, then okay, your upper body strength will still be that of a woman, but for all intents and purposes, you can call yourself a man. It does not matter. It doesn't matter how you call yourself. You can call yourself a dragonkin. And yeah, I know it actually does exist, people calling themselves that. But fair enough, you can call yourself that. It doesn't matter. But there are still two sexes. There is male and there is female. This is biology, people. This is not a social construct. This is true for 99% of all animals on this planet. We do not have to agree with it. I don't have to agree with gravity, but if I jump out of a building, I will still plummet towards the earth, whether I agree with it or not.
Sex positivity. An idea within certain types of feminism that views sex as, well, positive. It emphasizes things like sexual freedom, consent, and women's pleasure. Sex positivity acknowledges that women live in a culture that simultaneously views them as sex objects, but also forces them to repress their sexuality.
Now, the whole idea of sex positivity is, I wouldn't say alluring to me, because it's not really, but it's fair to me. And whether women are allowed to see sex as a positive thing, yeah, of course they are. Just like men are allowed to see sex as a positive thing. I mean, don't forget, we've been living under the banhammer of religion, and there have been different religions out there, and nearly all religions seem to think that sex is a negative thing, and not sex as in man or woman, but sex, the act. Why? I have no idea. So, should women see sex as something that could, be good? Well, sure, yeah. In a relationship, why the fuck not? Even outside of a relationship, if you want to sleep around, go ahead. Same is true for men. What I disagree about, though, is this. Women are not the only ones that are sexualized. Men are getting sexualized as well, in quite a large number. But we don't talk about it, or we don't hear about it, because, who cares? And if you don't believe that men are being sexualized, you know what? Do me a favor and look at any Coca-Cola Light commercial of the last, let's say, decade. Let's say 2 decades. And this is just one of the many examples I can take. But I'm going to go with that one. Have fun with it. And if you're a man, yeah, you're going to watch it and say, meh. And if you're a woman, you might look at the guy and think he's good looking, and you may look at the guy and think, meh. The point is, it's always been there. So yeah, men look at women, women look at men. And it's kind of unfair in a way because men are biologically triggered by the visual way more than women are. This is, again, not society, but biology.
Rape culture. The normalization of sexual assault in society. Literally, this term just describes societies where there's a high prevalence of rape and sexual assault.
I love it when rape culture gets mentioned. Unfortunately, currently in Sweden, there seems to be this thing called rape culture, which actually could be, pretty accurate. Then again, the problem with it is that it only became a rape culture after they changed some of the laws, and now certain things are considered rape that never were considered rape, and certain acts are considered rape, but if several of those acts happen in one day or even in 1 hour, they're all individual acts of rape. So maybe that's one way to create a rape culture, by calling everything rape. And yes, not too long ago there was this beautiful picture from a girl from, I think she was from India, who was claiming that she got raped every time their parents had an argument, which didn't mean she actually got raped, by the way, but the fact that the parents had an argument felt as being raped according to her. So yeah, if you're going to think like that, then there is a rape culture. Don't get me wrong, every rape is one too many. It really is. But can we stop with this nonsense about rape culture? Because there is no culture in the Western world where rape is being seen in a positive way. And I won't say that there aren't cultures where rape doesn't happen a lot and is more or less, condoned. But I'm 100% sure it's not in the Western world. And I'm not 100% sure, but I'm still pretty sure that even in the rest of the world, even in third world countries where rape happens more and, is still quite relatively common, people do realize it's a bad thing. So please, can you tell me, where is a rape culture?
Sexual harassment. Bullying or coercion of a sexual nature. Sexual harassment is always unwanted and often subtle in nature.
Where I agree that sexual harassment is a negative thing, and you could call it terrible or you could call it whatever, but just stick with negative for now. I also think that it has become a buzzword because now almost everything is sexual harassment. I mean, catcalling is sexual harassment, even though there are women who would love to get catcalled, but if you don't like it, it's sexual harassment. I saw a movie not too long ago of a woman who lost her cat and she was crying on the street, and a guy came up to her and asked her why she was crying, and apparently this already constituted sexual harassment. So, I'm sorry, you're devaluating the meaning of the word sexual harassment, of the words sexual harassment. And with that, you are creating a situation just like the girl who complained about that her parents were fighting and this constituted a rape to her. You're devaluating problems to encompass everything, even though the problem in itself should be enough. You don't have to lie about rape to make rape seem like a bad thing. You don't have to lie about sexual harassment because sexual harassment in itself is a bad thing. But be careful not to devaluate it, because once everything becomes sexual harassment, it doesn't matter, because fucked if you do, fucked if you don't. So why not just do it then? See, this is the mindset you're creating by calling everything an assault on women, rape, sexual harassment. The more you do it, the more people will think, well, I can't win then. This is, for example, why capital punishment is really a bad way for a society to keep their criminals in check. Because if you have a system that says 3 strikes you're out, people tend to think that the 3rd strike, well, if I'm going to go away for a long time anyway, I might as well kill someone. This is a mindset you're creating. This is the mindset feminism is creating. By calling everything sexual harassment, people no longer take sexual harassment serious. Is that the goal?
Internalized sexism, the involuntary internalization of sexist attitudes and beliefs present in society. This is why we see a lot of women embodying sexist attitudes about other women and even themselves, and why we see the existence of girl hate.
And this is where you can really see feminism learning from their big brother religions. God says in the Bible that only fools do not believe in the Bible, but there are fools, therefore if you do not believe in the Bible, see, the Bible predicted you would. Internalized misogyny, there are women who are against women, so if you disagree with feminism, see, feminism predicted this would happen, you are against feminism because blah 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 blah. I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense. And it's insulting to think that there are actually people who believe this shit.
Bodily autonomy, the idea that you should have control over your own body. This can encompass reproductive rights, such as access to safe and affordable abortion and birth control, as well as the fight to end sexual violence and rape.
Yeah, basically I'm 100% on this one as well. I mean, bodily autonomy is a thing. Women have the right to their own body. Funny enough, men have the right to their own body. So if you steal sperm and try to impregnate you with it, in a way, men should not be held accountable for your pregnancy. Funny enough, though, they are. I mean, if a woman chooses to become a mother, then fuck the guy who donated the sperm, but he will become a father whether he likes it or not. That's not completely bodily autonomy though, so I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole. So far I can only say, yeah, a woman's body is a woman's right, and she decides what happens with it, and no one else.
Body positivity. At its core, it's the idea that we should love our bodies, whether they be dark, light, thin, fat, abled, or disabled.
I, again, on average, agree 100%, whether you are dark, light, Chinese, Mexican, it doesn't matter. I do, however, see a small discrepancy, because if you are severely underweight or severely overweight, I'm not saying you should be shamed for it, and I really think you shouldn't be shamed for it, but you shouldn't be proud of it either, because you are at a huge health risk. Again, being disabled is not your choice. It's not much you can do. But being underweight or being overweight, there is some level of control there. It's not a lot. I won't say you can do everything, but there is some level of control. Try to exert your control as much as you can to prevent yourself from being too light or too heavy.
Okay, so I know that this is only the tip of the iceberg, and there are so many other important terms that deserve to be discussed. However, it's kind of impossible to fit everything in a single video, so I'm going to ask all of you for suggestions for other terms I didn't get to talk about that I can put into a future part 2 video.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there are more words and there are more terms within feminism that you could, I don't know, bring out and explain. And I might make more movies about it as well to explain. Not to counter you, because in some things I do agree with you. The problem with feminism, though, is that even though they claim in this movie yourself, for example, they are not for women, feminism is a segratary movement. It talks about half of the genders and sees the other half as a problem. And this is where we go wrong. There is no good world, there is no good society where segregation has ever worked. I'm not quite sure why we're trying it again, even though now we don't segregate on race, we segregate on gender. Must be me, I must be losing it, I don't understand it. And at the same time, I guess this is also where intersectionality came from, because non-white women felt feminism didn't have room for them. Which is not true, because there were non-white women within feminism that felt that it was good for them, so they invented intersectionality to make it clearer. Again, it's not about excluding people, it's about including people. And if you are, whether you call yourself a feminist or you call yourself the third rock from the sun, I don't care. If you are all about equality and that men and women have the same rights and the same duties and the same laws protecting them, then I'm 100% on board with you. I cannot exclaim this hard enough. Feminism, however, doesn't say that. Feminism doesn't fight for the equality of men and women. And that's where it hurts. Do women have the same rights as men? Well, yes, they should, don't get me wrong, and they have them. Do men have the same rights as women? No. Now, is this a problem? Well, in a way it is, because this is why you see MRA movements and MGTOW movements gaining in popularity. This is why you see a lot of women turning their back on feminism, because it's lying. It's talking about equality as if it's something that needs to be gained on men, when in reality it's the other way around. And more people are noticing this. More and more people are waking up to the small but destroyed and destructive fact that women aren't a suppressed class. I mean, we can talk for hours and hours about the glass ceiling and oh my god, how unfair it is that not 50% of all women, not 50% of all directors are female. Yeah, you know what? Not 50% of all sewage workers are female. But you never hear anyone about that. And I can tell you this, there are more men and women, but let's talk about men only. There are more men working low-end, low-paid jobs than there are as directors of international firms. Yet somehow women seem to think that that's where equality needs to be gotten. Not at the bottom, but at the top. There is a reason why in universities in America alone, men are a declining number. Less and less men, white men, are going to university. Your society is losing because of it. And feminism keeps pushing the same narrative. And this narrative is driving people away. Again, I am all for equal rights. Can't we just do that?